Hi, my name is Gary Higbee, and I have a story for you today. I want to talk about my first experience with safety. And I had gone to college with no intention of working in a factory, but lo and behold, the grades weren't so good. I guess that 1.8 average in pre-engineering wasn't too good for the college. And so I went back and got a job in the summer and took a part-time course or two to get my grades up. But while I was doing that job, I was working for John Deere, great company, and I was on an assembly line, and it was no big deal assembly line. I was making sugar beet planters, and so my job was to take a part that was moving down a conveyor from one end to the other, and I just did a little section of it, put some bolts and some parts and torque some parts. And so the idea was to work along these parts as the conveyor was moving and make sure I got everything and put it on there, and got down here to the end, and I should be done with it. Now I walk back to the other part and I started doing the same thing. And so it's not a very exciting job, but it certainly was a good job, and it paid well, and it was going to give me money for school. And I worked for a guy by the name of Frank, and Frank came out one afternoon. He said, hey, Hig, you got to stay over. And I didn't want to stay over. I had something I really wanted to do. And at that time, we had this rule that if the next shift person on that line didn't show up or wasn't going to show up, then we were required to stay 2 hours over. I really didn't want to stay the 2 hours. And so Frank came out to me, and I'd had all my safety gear off, and I was sitting there on a folding chair. I've taken off my shoes, my safety shoes, and just getting ready to go. They let us stop about 10 minutes before the end of the shift to do a little cleanup and get ready. And Frank comes out and says, hey, Hig, you got to stay over. And I said, Frank, I really can't stay over today. I really don't want to stay over today. I got something really important I want to do. And he says, I don't care what you want to do. You got to stay over 2 hours. That's the rule. That's the procedure. And I said, Frank, it's near Christmas time. As all these guys here have family. They have reasons for working overtime. They'd love to have the extra money. I'm on the dumb part of the job. I mean, it's that's where they put the beginners. You don't have to know anything for this part of the job. Why don't you have somebody else do it? And he says, no, I'm not going to have anybody else do it. You've got to do it. And Frank and I are kind of at each other a little bit, and I'm kind of raised my voice a little bit. In fact, I stood up out of that folding chair, and I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me, and he says, you know, what's the big deal? Why can't you stay? It's only 2 hours. And I said, well, if you must know, Frank, I got a date. And Frank says, well, a date? I mean, a dinner date? I said, yeah, a dinner date. He said, well, you're going to get out of here at 5:30. You still got time to take a shower and get to a dinner date. And I said, well, this gal I got the hots for in high school, I really wanted to date her, and she wouldn't pay any attention to me, and now all of a sudden she's willing to go out with me, and I really do want to go out with her, but she's moved away. She doesn't live in my hometown anymore. She doesn't live close to us. She's moved away about 2 hours. And I said, by the time I got out of here, 5:30, by the time I got showered up, my goodness, I'm not going to be on the road till after 6. And by the time I got there, it'd be at least 8, and she wouldn't want to go out with me. I was just too late. And the argument kind of got heated and more heated. And Frank says, I don't care if you got a date with Aunt Margaret, you're not leaving. Well, I want to tell all of you that if I had a date with Aunt Margaret, I'd have quit, and we'd have solved the whole issue. I'd have gone to my date. But the date wasn't with Aunt Margaret, and I was losing the argument, and finally I stood up, or I had sat down, and I stood up again. I grabbed that folding chair, and I said, all right, Frank, I'll work. And I slammed that folding chair shut, cut the end of my finger off in it. If you look here real close, you can see that I've got stitches all the way around. And of course, now the end of my finger's on the floor. There's blood pouring out. Frank's going, oh, I'm going, this doesn't feel really good. And I guess I showed him I didn't work. But I didn't go on my date either. I got up to, they took the end of my finger, and we took it and put it in a bag, and we headed up to the hospital, and I was getting ready to go into surgery, and I borrowed a phone, and I called her. We didn't have cell phones back then. And I borrowed a phone and called her, and I said, hey, Pat, I'm not coming. I've cut the end of my finger off. She thought that I was lying to her, that this was just an excuse for all the time she turned me down. And so she gets in the car and she drives down and finds out that I literally am having surgery. And she's there, and I came out of surgery, and we kind of hit it off. And we started dating, and we ended up getting married, and we were married for 13 years, had 4 beautiful children. And then she kind of got tired of me and decided she wanted to do other things. And after $300,000 worth of alimony and child support, it dawned on me I should have just shut up and worked.